Hello and welcome to Back to the Feature. I'm your host Giovanni, and this is a show where we look at movies past, present, and future. Today we're looking at a little movie called Crocodile Dundee. Alright guys, I'm sitting here with my usual friends Gian and Gian. And like I said earlier, we're looking at Crocodile Dundee. It's the story of an American reporter who goes to the Australian outback to report on an eccentric crocodile hunter. And after he saves her life, she brings him back to New York City with her. So guys, this is, honestly, was one of the bigger comedies that came out during 1986. I was actually speaking with my parents about just to get a little perspective as far as how big this movie was when it came out. And this is one that everybody saw. In fact, it was even nominated for an Oscar for its screenplay. It actually won a Golden Globe for Paul Hogan and was nominated 2 other times, one for its screenplay and one for Linda Kozlowski as well. So I mean, this is a movie that was heaped with a lot of praise. It was very successful, especially too for being kind of a smaller Australian film. What are some of the positives from this film?
Well, touching on what you were just talking about being one of like the biggest movies of 1986. Well, the biggest comedy, and it was nominated for Oscar, an Oscar and a bunch of Golden Globes. It's actually kind of crazy when you look back and see how much money this movie made. It actually made over $350 million worldwide.
That's insane.
Wow.
Only second to Top Gun for 1986.
$350 million in 1986.
In 1986,
and they had a sweaty volleyball scene in there.
Yeah. It actually beat. Well, I mean, you got Paul Hogan with the shirt off most of this movie, though.
That's true. There's a lot of sweaty,
even though
sexy
he's bald,
men.
I mean, yeah. Even though he's balding, he still looks good.
He's got the hat. He's got the hat to cover it up.
But I mean, it beat out Platoon.
That's crazy.
It's crazy, isn't it? Crazy to think. I mean, seriously, it really is crazy. But I think some of the positives. I grew up with this movie. This is one of my dad's. One of the movies my dad watched all the time, and it was kind of one of those family favorites growing up. It was probably one of the first like kind of hero type characters I ever saw. I was probably like 2-3 years old. Seeing this guy, and they do play it up like he's kind of this not quite human character. Like they kind of tease like that he has telepathy.
Mm-hmm.
And then he can communicate with animals.
Australian instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just love that. I love how Paul Hogan plays it. This was his first feature film. I mean, everything else was garbage that he's done, besides besides Crocodile Dundee, which is his character. And I love the way he plays it. I love that stoic, kind of mysterious subtlety that he kind of plays into it.
Like lighthearted though, like heart of gold kind of thing.
Yeah. And I love the way that him and Sue, like the way he flirts with Sue, or the way he tries to get, impress her. Mm-hmm. And I love those aspects of it. Like when he quick looks at Wally's watch, and then he looks at the sun real quick. Oh yeah, it's 2:20. And she's like, oh my gosh, it's 2:20. And it's funny because he's already a badass. He doesn't actually have to be doing that. So I think that innocence to the character, I enjoyed that rewatching it after so many years.
He definitely plays this larger than life character. Mm-hmm. And just kind of as big as the stories that we hear in the beginning of the movie. Everybody kind of talking about he lost his leg fighting the alligator and stuff when it just bit him.
Yeah, and I love that it's kind of like they're obviously trying to make money. They're trying to get the publicity to this tiny little town in Australia. So it's kind of like how much of it is real and how much of it is fake. But obviously there is a lot of stuff that is real because he was raised by Aborigines and he was, raised in that lifestyle. So he does have different gifts than normal people, but at the same time they're playing tricks on her a little bit, or at least Wally is.
Yeah, I think he's definitely is the best part of the movie. Paul Hogan, you really buy his character, that he's a real character, and he does do like you said with the watch thing. And I like the scene in the restaurant where they're at the restaurant at the menu, and even though he can't read Italian, he's still looking at it like maybe he's gonna figure out something.
Yeah.
And then he just says screw it and punches the guy. But which should have saw that coming. He pretty much punches everybody in the movie that isn't Sue. So, but But no, like I like his character. He is charming. Like you can't help but kind of feel like, oh, you know, he is a charming guy. He's kind of like, you can see like in real life you would like him. Mm-hmm. Like when they're in Australia and he gets like the what is he feeding her again? The
insects of some kind.
Yeah, it was like a fruit too, wasn't it? Like some sort of fruit.
Mm-hmm. And he's just got like a can of, you know.
Yeah, he's like
it's like the essence of life, but it tastes like shit. Yeah.
Stuff like that, you know. I definitely get that, and I think one of my positives for the movie is I thought, which my favorite part of the movie is like the first half hour, 45 minutes of it, when they were still in Australia.
Yeah.
I thought that was the most interesting part of the movie for me because you don't see it as much of like people going to the less hospitable. Well, you see it, but it's still a more interesting concept of somebody going to a less hospitable place and seeing somebody like that in their home turf. You know, I just found that the most interesting part of the movie, and it was enjoyable at that point. I was kind of like, all right, yeah, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like for me, I kind of felt that the most interesting part was like the first 30 minutes of them in Australia. I really kind of enjoyed just a little bit of the larger than life kind of tale of this guy, and then you kind of see a little bit of the reality of him. And some of the jokes you guys just mentioned from that sequence, I really enjoyed. I also enjoyed the little scene with the Aborigine guy. I forget his name right now. Who comes by?
Neville.
Yeah,
Neville.
He comes by at night, you know, and she asks like, "Oh, how is he able to move through the darkness?" You know, and like basically
he feels his way,
and you hear him like bump into something off in the distance and like swear. I was going like, "Oh, that's pretty good." I really like the bean thing too. That was actually really funny. But yeah, I think the first 30 minutes definitely the stronger part of the movie.
I think it's a fairly pretty movie too. Like it's a lot of that stuff that they show in Australia is actually shot very beautifully. Mm-hmm. And I love this kind of like that magic feel that you get from Australia. I mean, they play up in that kind of the mystery of Australia, and it's authentic.
Yeah.
You know, you can feel the authenticity from the Australia filmmakers.
So guys, after talking about some of the more positive things we liked about this, what are some of the things maybe you didn't like quite as much about Crocodile Dundee?
Well, I guess for me, a lot of the humor in the latter half of the movie is kind of played out at that point. Mm-hmm. I guess one of the things for me is I was waiting for some other part of the plot to kick in. Whereas, like, okay, so he's in New York, he's going to spend a day adjusting, and then something's going to happen where he's going to have to do something to win the girl over. Mm-hmm. And he just kind of stumbles around New York, and it's kind of the same. He doesn't get it.
Yeah.
But for the whole last 50 minutes of the movie, it's just that. And so I was kind of disappointed that it didn't go where, okay, now he's got to use what he's learned to accomplish. Yeah, that's what I thought. He's going to use what he learned in his couple days in New York to sort of find a way to impress her and be like, look, I can be versatile.
There really isn't much of an arc in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't really seem like it doesn't go anywhere beyond that kind of concept.
It's her being a fish out of water in Australia, which you said was kind of the more interesting part. And then there's, the second half where it's just kind of more fish out of water, but him like, oh, see, he doesn't get what it's like in the big city, and it just sort of goes on like that.
Yeah, it just keeps carrying out.
Yeah.
And I get that too. I actually have a hard time pulling out the flaws of this because I have so much nostalgia from Crocodile Dundee, but I also pull a lot of that nostalgia from the sequel, which does have a lot more stuff going on. But like what you guys are saying, the relationship definitely isn't fleshed out very well. It just kind of lingers for a really long time. Because even, it's been, 15 years since I watched this movie. So, rewatch, I was like, what is going to happen? Something's going to happen and nothing is happening, kind of. So, I understand that. It's definitely,
It definitely has kind of one joke, and it just sort of rides that one joke until that horse just dies. And I think that for me, it kind of made it not the most enjoyable watch, but I didn't watch this movie just absolutely hating every second of it or anything.
Yeah, there's definitely stuff sprinkled in there.
It keeps your interest level, but I definitely didn't find myself really being drawn or really clinging to any one thing in this movie. It just sort of played and I watched it.
Yeah, I think, at that point, the strength of the movie, and I think what probably worked for it for the time period, was just the strength of how the character. Like, even though the stuff happening in the movie is played out, like, Paul Hogan's reactions to stuff, it still feels genuine. Like, when he finds out that the woman at the bar was, was in drag or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And this sort of reaction to people, or like when he's interacting with that dude in the same scene. The one guy comes up to him.
That's the Italian guy, the cab driver, you mean?
No, the other guy,
okay.
The black dude that comes up to him in the bar and is just like, "Hey, you're cool," and they're trying to communicate with their different types of lingo. And they have that sort of awkward exchange, and he does the. Like stuff like that. Like I thought that was kind of neat. Like it's sort of like his reaction felt really genuine. It's like that could really happen. This conversation really would take place.
Yeah, as one note as it is, I think Paul Hogan definitely has a charisma to him that is able to carry the movie for its runtime.
Yeah.
But I think that it's definitely, though, it kind of settles into that one joke and doesn't go beyond it. There isn't much of an arc for the character, and I think that's really where the movie maybe doesn't really quite bring it to that next level that it really needed to go to, I think, to really be something that really, captivated me.
And that's what they, I've read other reviews on it, too. But it definitely, like the train station, the subway station at the end. Like to me, I really enjoyed that sequence. I love them like calling down to him like. I
think the only thing with it though is that it feels so, and this is my first time seeing this too, by the way, guys. I've never seen this movie before, so I mean I obviously have seen so many other movies that have done similar things, but I think that even at that point, that when it came out in 1986, other movies had kind of done that already. So for me, it just kind of felt like, oh, he's chasing you to the airport, he's chasing you to the train station. Like we've seen that so many times. Well, it's been emulated like
thousands of times.
It definitely didn't invent it, and so for me, it definitely felt played out. Something that I've seen before. So for me, it didn't really have too much impact.
That being said, I was glad they didn't do some sort of joke in there where it was like a Chinese whispers thing where she says, "I love you," and then by the time it gets to him, it's like, "She left the stove on," or something lame like that. It didn't really like try to go. I like that she couldn't get to him, so she had to figure out some kind of creative way to communicate with them, and it's sort of embarrassing. And I did like that they did it like that, but the whole time I'm thinking like, do you though? Like it felt like you don't want to think about it too hard because it's sort of like, oh, okay, so he's really awkward and that's cute, but then basically she loves him because they happen to stumble into really extreme situations.
Yeah, I think he's really good at stabbing reptiles. Like their love is
he saves their life,
threatening people.
Well, I mean, it would make sense why someone could be having an infatuation for someone like that. Spend a bunch of time in the outback with this guy.
That's one of the
alone time camping with him.
I think that's one of the things I just kind of didn't like. I really didn't like their relationship, really. It just didn't work for me. It didn't play.
I think it is just novice acting by the both, because it is both of theirs first feature film. I mean...
But it's definitely, though, it does that thing that a lot of movies do. It's that trope where she's got the sleazy boyfriend back home, where you kind of look at it and you go like, why were you even dating that dude in the first place, kind of thing. Like they just make him so sleazy and so unlikable. Yeah, that it definitely feels. That they have that kind of
not as bad as that guy though.
Stathis. He's definitely a Stathis. Maybe not quite as like crazy as Stathis, but like you said, the sleazy ex-boyfriend that you just sort of like, why is this guy even here?
And it's always a coworker. You ever notice that? Like that's just a.
It's just an 80s trope.
It's an 80s thing. Yeah, that's a straight out of the 80s trope there.
The thing with the relationship, though, what we were saying though is at the beginning of the movie you kind of see where it's going, and I think maybe you're on the same thing with me. You're like, oh, I see where this is going. All right, this could work. I like if this is the story of how they meet. I like this because it makes sense. Like you can see it, but then you are kind of disappointed because in the next type of movie it doesn't go. That's what you think is going to build up to something, and it doesn't. It starts off good, but then it doesn't really go anywhere beyond he just follows her around a lot, and then she almost gets mugged.
Yeah. And for me, it just kind of felt like she was just sort of jerking these two guys around a little bit. That I just kind of, I don't know, I just kind of didn't like that. And it didn't really make me sit there and root for them. Oh, you need to get together with her. She just, I don't know, she sounds confused to me.
Yeah.
So having said kind of all of that, the big thing, and we were kind of touching on it, does this movie hold up from 1986, watching it now, here in 2016? Is this a movie you could see the script getting greenlit today, and maybe Crocodile Dundee happening today? Not a remake or a reboot. I mean, this fresh script hits producers, does it get made, does this thing hold up?
I don't think so. I guess it depends on the lead, though, too. I mean, if you could bring someone like Paul Hogan out again, who plays it very similar, but like something nuanced, something for our generation, something for our time, I think it maybe could work. Maybe.
We need the right charismatic.
It's got to be the right charismatic, because that's what holds it together in the first place.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Maybe if you had the right actor, that this idea could work. Gian?
Yeah, if they did it, it'd have to be the right, not only the right actor, but I think a lot of the appeal was that he was sort of like, who's this guy? And I don't know who that would, we don't know who that would be.
Chris Hemsworth.
But we already know.
Yeah, it's too. Yeah,
we already know. Yes, some of the novelty of that is not really there. I think compared to other movies that came out that year, especially other comedies, this movie isn't like as dated as I expected it to be for the most part. Especially like the first half of the Australia stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I could watch a whole movie like about this.
Yeah.
But then sort of the humor is a bit, but it also doesn't go too over the top, so that's okay. I can see why it made a lot of money in the time it came out. I think now it would fall a bit flat, especially if they at the same time had taken movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and made it now. That movie would be a lot stronger than this one.
For sure.
The way it's made, the Ferris Bueller is more timeless. This one is more dated. It's more of just a 1986 movie. You know what I mean?
Perfect for 1986.
Perfect for 1986, and it's not bad now. It's not bad, but it just doesn't have that like creativity that like a movie like Ferris Bueller has that transcends sort of the era that it came from. So yeah, it wouldn't be as successful. It doesn't hold up as much, but again, going into it, it wasn't as dated as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I thought about. Was I really felt like as I was talking about before in the negatives, I felt like elements of their relationship felt antiquated and felt very just sort of like this would be something that could happen in the 80s, but only then. Yeah. Like I thought of some other movies like Major League. You know, there's like how that relationship works. Like you could only do that in the 80s. If you did that now, you could never. That would never fly now.
People wouldn't buy that.
No, they wouldn't buy it. And that's how I felt watching this, especially for the first time. I really couldn't quite buy that. Maybe that's something that should just sort of stay in the 80s. So guys, we're getting to the end of our episode here. So it's time for final summaries and grades. Gian?
Well, I guess to sum it all up, it's a movie that you can see it being successful in the time it came out. It's more of like a rental now. Paul Hogan's character is pretty strong, and I think that charisma kind of lends itself to the movie, but the way the kind of plot kind of falls flat, it doesn't quite get there nowadays. I give this movie a C+. I think that most of the strength is just from the character, but the whole time I'm watching it, I'm waiting for the next thing to happen. That's gonna make this, that's where this plot's going, but it doesn't get there. As you're sort of just watching it, and it's easy to kind of passively watch it. But it's not a bad movie. It really isn't a bad movie at all. Like you can see it being successful, and it's an all right movie. You can own it and not be ashamed to own it. Yeah.
John.
Crocodile Dundee. It's a fun movie. It holds a lot of nostalgia for me. Does everything in this hold up? No, it doesn't. It does have some cheese. It does have some of that 80s era cheese. But I think, Mick Dundee is a really great character, a really memorable character, no matter how you look at it. And as a cult film, and it wasn't a cult film when it came out, but I think it's become kind of a cult film.
Yeah.
Cult 80s film, and I think this is a B movie through and through for me.
Crocodile Dundee is definitely a product of its time. There's some things in it, like we've said here today, they're a little antiquated, definitely, just like I said, of its time. But it's held together by a charismatic lead in Paul Hogan, so it's definitely something that's watchable, maybe something for the middle of a Sunday afternoon when it comes on TNT. I didn't quite enjoy this movie that much, but I definitely didn't find myself watching it and just being like, oh man, this is some sort of penance for something wrong I've done. I give this movie a C. So that's been our final grades and summaries for Crocodile Dundee. Next week, guys, we're going to keep it in the present. We're going to take a look at The Magnificent Seven, the 19th remake of Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. So guys, like and subscribe. Comment down below as well. We've been back to the feature. I am your host, Giovanni Carlo.
I'm John Vandeloo.
And Gian Carlo.
We'll see you next week for The Magnificent Seven.